निर्घोषमेकं स्यन्दनमाश्रितौ प्रावृषेण्यं पयोवाहं विद्युदैरावताविव. The two of them, Dilip and Sudakshina, got onto a bright chariot which made deep but agreeable sound like the Airavata and the lightning. Snigdha Gambhira Nirghosham Ekam Syandanam Ashritau. Syandanam means a chariot. Ekam Syandanam Ashritau. One chariot. Ashritau is the two of them got into. Who are the two of them? Dilip and his wife Sudakshina. What kind of chariot that was? Snigdha Gambhira Nirghosham. The chariot which made deep but agreeable sound. And the poet is specifically mentioning Ekam Syandanam Ashritau. Why is he telling they got into one chariot? Because during those days, the king and queen, when they travel, they would generally travel in their own separate chariots. The king would go in his chariot and the queen would go in her chariot. But here, Dilip and Sudakshina are traveling, both of them are traveling on the same chariot. It indicates the love that Dilip and Sudakshina have for each other, and also shows the amount of closeness, the bonding they have with each other. In the second line of this verse, it says, Pravrushenyam payovaham vidyutairavataaviva. Pravrushenyam means the rainy season. Payovaha is the cloud. Because it carries water, it is called payovaha. And vidyut is lightning. Airavata is Indra's elephant. So what this says is, like how Airavata and Vidyut, lightning, travel on the cloud of the rainy season, like that King Dilipa and his wife Sudakshina travelled on the same chariot. This Airavata is always associated in Sanskrit literature, he is always associated with Vidyut, they are lightning. They are considered to be an inseparable couple. And this simile is very apt because this cloud, the kind of sound it makes, which is very deep but agreeable, similarly Dilipa's chariot also made that kind of a sound. And the male in this duo, Airavata and Vidyut, is Airavata. He is compared with Dilipa. Dilipa is also very majestic like Airavata. Airavata is known for his majesty, and so is King Dilip. Vidyut is always associated with beauty which is out of the world, and it is very apt for Sudakshina. And this word Syandanam means a chariot, which and also it means that which pours down. Syandanam is something which goes very fast. Syandate iti syandanam. And it also means something which pours down. So this word Syandanam applies to the upamanam, the thing which is to which something is being compared, and also to the upameyam, a thing which is the object of comparison. The commentary says for Airavata the description is Meghasyopari yo meghaha sa Airavata uchyate, which means the cloud which is on top of a cloud is Airavata. This makes real good sense because Indra is considered as a lord of atmosphere. He controls the wind, the rain, etc. So his chariot is the cloud, and this Airavata is supposed to be a cloud which is on top of a cloud. So it's a particular type of cloud, and I think the ancient Indians have studied these clouds, and to make this study more interesting they created like this characters and stories to make it more interesting. Who will find science boring if it's taught in such an interesting manner through stories? Ma bhudashrama pideti parimeya purassaro anubhava visheshattu sena parivrita viva. In order to not cause trouble to the hermitage, they took minimal entourage with them, but due to their resplendence, it looked as if they were surrounded by an army. The hermits live in hermitages, which is always very far from the city, in the forests. They choose such place in order to have a very peaceful environment that is suitable for them to meditate. So King Dilip, usually the kings when they go with a huge entourage. But King Dilip did not want to disturb the hermitage, so he took very limited people with him. But because of their King Dilip's and Sudakshina's resplendence and their brilliance, even though they took very few people with them, it looked as if they were accompanied by a whole army. This verse shows how sensitive King Dilip was and how humble he was, and the respect he has for these ashrams. Even in Abhignana Shakuntalam, the drama written by Kalidasa, a similar thing happens with Dushyanta. When he enters the ashram of Kanva Maharshi, he tells his chariot, he gives all his ornaments to his charioteer and he tells him, Vinita Veshena Praveshtavyani Tapovanani Nama. That is, we have to enter these tapovanams, these ashrams, with very simple clothing. So Kalidasa, through these heroes, he conveys what kind of behavior we should have towards these kind of places, ashrams and other very places of divinity. Sevyamanau sukhasparshaihi shala niryasagandhibihi pushparenutkireirvataihi adhutavanarajibhihi. Being fanned by the comforting touch of the wind, which carried the fragrance of the juice of sal trees, which scattered the pollen grains of flowers, and which gently shook the rows of forest trees, they travelled. The verb for this word, jagmatuhu, must be taken from the previous verses. Few more verses from now onwards will have the same verb, and few more verses from now onwards will give a beautiful description of the journey of King Dilip and his wife Sudakshina until they reach the ashram of Vasishtha. This verse describes the kind of breeze that the two of them experienced. What kind of breeze? Shala Niryasa Gandhibihi. The breeze that carried the fragrance of the juice of the sal trees. Pushpa Renut Kirnaihi. The breeze that scattered the pollen grains of flowers. Manobhirama Shrunvantau Rathane Misvanonmukhaihi Shajja Samvadini Keka Dvidha Bhinna Shikhandibhihi. Listening to the heart-pleasing notes of double kind and corresponding to Shadja musical note of Sa, of peacocks that lifted their faces due to the sounds of the chariots they travelled. The previous verse described the kind of breeze that the couple experienced. This verse describes the kind of sound that they experienced. So they listened to the sound of the peacocks, sound made by the peacocks. Shikhandi bhihi. Shikhandi is the name for a peacock. Shikhandi bhihi. What kind of peacock? Ratha nemis swanon mukhaihi shikhandi bhihi. By the sound made by the peacocks, which lifted their heads upon hearing to the sound of the chariot. And the word keka refers to the sound which is made by the peacocks. What kind of sound did they make? Manobhiramaha kekaha. Manobhiramaha is that which is very pleasing for the mind. So they made a sound which is very pleasing for the mind. Not just that, Shajja Samvadinihi Manoramaha Kekaha. Shajja Samvadini means that which resembled the Shajja musical note. Shajja is nothing but the sa. In sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, sa is the full form of that is Shajja. The 7 musical notes of classical Indian music are Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara, Madhyama, Panchama, Dhaivata and Nishada. These are abbreviated as Sa, Ri, Ga, Ma, Pa, Dha and Ni. The poet has mentioned Dvida Bhinnaha Shadja Samvadinihi Kekaha. What is this Dvida Bhinnaha? It is said that the Shadja note can be divided into 2 types, Shuddham and Vikritam. It is Shuddham when it has these 4 Shrutis, Tivra, Kumudvati, Manda and Chandovati. If it is otherwise, then it is called Vikrita. Parasparaakshi sadrishyam adurojhitavartmasu mrigadvandveshu pashyantau syandanabadha drishtishu. They observed the similarity of each other's eyes in the deer couple's eyes. The deer couples moved a little out of the way and kept their gaze fixed on the moving chariot. So, in the previous verses, Kalidasa describes first the feel of the breeze, what kind of feel of the breeze the couple experienced. Then he describes the kind of sounds that they heard. Now he explains the kind of sight that they had. What did they see on their way? They saw a herd of deers where the deers were with their mates, deer couples, full of deer couples. In what did they see in them? Mrigadvandveshu, that is, in those deer couples, they saw first what kind of deer couples they were. Adurojhita vartmasu. So, adurojhita vartmasu mrigadvandveshu. In the deer couples which went only very little bit away from the chariot, listening to the sound of the chariot, they did not run away very far. They went only very little away from the chariot. Why is the poet mentioning this? We all know that animals sense the kind of person a human is. If a person approaches them with the intention to kill them, to harm them, then they can sense that and they run very far away. But when they sense that the person is very good hearted, then they don't run away. They come close or they remain close. So through this verse, Kalidasa is telling that King Dilip and Queen Sudakshina were very good hearted people. So the deers did not run away from them. They just went little bit far from them, that too because of the sound of the chariot. What did they see in these deers? Paraspara akshi sadrishyam pashyantau jagmatuhu. They travelled by seeing the similarity of each other's eyes in those deer couples. That is, King Dilip saw the similarity of Sudakshina's eyes in the female deer. In the female deer's eyes, he saw the similarity it had with Sudakshina's eyes. And Sudakshina saw in the male deer's eyes the similarity that it had with the eyes of King Dilipa, which means to say these deers were in pairs, they were mates. So there was this love for each other, and Sudakshina saw the love in Dilipa's eyes, that same thing she saw in the male deer's eyes. And King Dilipa saw in female deer's eyes that love which was also there in Sudakshina's eyes. This is a very beautiful verse where this romance is so gracefully explained here. Thank you for watching this episode. Bahu dhanyavadaha. Kripaya the Sanskrit Garden Vahini like, share, subscribe kurvantu. Agrima video मध्ये पुनर्मिलामि. नमस्ते.